just enjoying the sun, I guess. But beautiful day. Let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, and we'll get into the worship service. So God, thank you for all you've given us. Thank you for this time to come and worship you and song, worship you in our fellowship, worship you in our study of the scriptures. But most importantly, help us to worship you and how we respond and submit to the Holy Spirit when He speaks to us. We love you. Just now, I pray. Amen. Let's sing this song together, Above All. Above all powers, above all kings, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways of man, you were here before the world began. Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth, there's no way to measure what you're worth. Crucified, lay behind the stone, you lived to die, rejected and alone like a rose, trampled on the ground. You took the fall and thought of me above all. Above all powers, above all kings, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways of man, you were here before the world began. Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth, there's no way to measure what you're worth. Crucified, lay behind the stone, you lived to die, rejected and alone like a rose, trampled on the ground. You took the fall and thought of me above all. Crucified, lay behind the stone, you lived to die, rejected and alone like a rose, trampled on the ground. You took the fall and thought of me above all. Aren't you glad that He thought of us above everything else? He took the fall, He took our sin upon Himself, and that's the love that He has above all. He thought of us. When we think about that, a word that comes to my mind is His faithfulness. Aren't you thankful for the faithfulness of God? Aren't you glad He's more faithful to us than we are to Him? But the song, an old hymn that says, "Great is thy faithfulness." Great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature and manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Oh, great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hands have provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow, blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Oh, great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. You notice it did not say all I have wanted, right? Well, God, I want this and you didn't give it to me. Well, maybe you didn't need that. But he gives everything that we need. So sometimes our wants and our minds become our needs. And he says, no, you don't need that. That's just a want, but I'll give you what you need. Proverbs chapter 31, please. Proverbs chapter 31. This is the last message in the book of Proverbs. We've been looking at some bites from Proverbs. I'm not sure how long we've been through this. A chapter a week, so somewhere around 7 weeks plus 8 weeks, somewhere around there, a couple months. And so, but the next series we're going to do, probably be in August, that time. We'll do some other things between June and July. But August, well, if the Lord continues the thought that I want to go, is will be in the book of Ecclesiastes with the thought of experimenting with happiness. That's pretty much what Solomon did. How can I be happy? I'll try this, I'll try this, I'll try this. And he found out how to get real happiness. And we're going to look at those things, Lord willing, in August. But now, Proverbs chapter 31. As I mentioned, it's interesting. Today's Father's Day, and we happen to be in Proverbs chapter 31, when the whole chapter pretty much is about the virtuous woman. But we're going to look at it from a different angle, and we're going to look at this word. The word is influence. As I was reading this, I thought to myself, there are a lot of people that this virtuous woman had an influence on. As I'm reading it, she influenced this person and that person and that person. So we're going to look at that thought. We live in a world where influence is everything. How many followers you have on Facebook? How many, what do y'all call it on Instagram? Followers? Yeah, okay. Followers on Instagram, how many tweets you have on Twitter, or this and this, how many so-called friends you have, how many likes you have, all those types of things. And it's easy for us to get on the internet or social media and be influenced by some things, or news for that matter. I mean, how often do we read the news and we take it at face value and we're influenced by some things? I did not live in this day, but my mom and dad tell me about the day and age when you had presidents up for presidency, the candidates, and they would actually have a real conversation. They would have a real debate. Here's what we believe. Here's my ideas. Here's where I stand. Here's where I don't stand. And now we have, I just try to influence a group of people so they'll vote for me type of thing. How can we influence folks? And if you think about marketing, people in businesses, how can I influence the most people with this? What about this picture or this video? Influence is a big thing. Well, look at that word, and whether we like it or not, all of us in this room has an influence on somebody. We may not do it on purpose, but we are influencing people behind us, people beside us, people who see us, our next door neighbor, all those types of things. They watch us. When we do something out of the ordinary, they think, wait a minute, that's not what you normally do. That's not your normal thing. You've had an influence on that person. It's like muddy footprints. When your child comes in with the muddy shoes, every place they've been, you know where they have been because they have left marks behind. And they've left their mark. They left their whatever the case may be. I like, if I was not a pastor and God said, you can have the choice of being anything you want, anything you want to be in the whole right world, I would probably be a detective. I think it's so cool to see the clues, to leave fingerprints behind, or now the DNA behind. You leave something behind. And so we're going to look at that thought about influence. How can we have an influence in this world? Or the better thought is, how can we have a biblical or a spiritual influence in this world? The teen class that we used to have in the other church, we started off with one teenager, and we ended up with 30 teenagers plus on youth nights and things, and we even had more than that on some youth nights. And I would tell them, I said, the children's church, I did both children's church and teens. So when I teach the children's church, they are watching the teenagers to see how they act. And as a kid, I said, I can't wait to be a teenager. I can't wait to be in a youth group. I can't wait to go on that out. I can't wait to do all this kind of cool stuff. And the teen, I don't want them to follow me. You ain't got a choice. You are influencing them. You can say, well, stop looking at me. Stop listening to me. It don't matter. They are going to watch. They're going to hear. You do have an influence. So what kind of influence do we have? Proverbs chapter 22 and verse number 1. Proverbs 22 and verse number 1, Solomon says this: a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. Does Solomon know something about riches, yes or no? Well, sure he did. He said, of all the riches that I have, the richest man in the world at that time, he said a good name, a good testimony. The second part is this: a loving favor, rather than silver and gold, or a influence, a good influence, a loving influence, rather than silver or gold. What kind of influence do we have? Two questions, then we get into Proverbs chapter 31. The first question is this: who are you influencing? Maybe you think about somebody in mind, your spouse, your kids, your people you work with, your friends, your neighbors. And oftentimes, if we think hard enough, we think about, well, I did hold open a door for somebody. I influenced that person. Your conversation with the Walmart, unless you go self-checkout, but the person who checks you out at Safeway or something, you influence them somehow. The people the gas attendant, you influence them somehow. Everybody that your life touches, you're influencing them somehow. The question is this: how are you influencing them? What type of influence are you? I saw this. I should put it up there. I saw this clip on Facebook. It had a pear hanging from a tree. Then it had a rotten pear. It was all brown and stuff. That was touching the good pear. What eventually happened to the good pear? It turned rotten, right? Just by touching it. This rotten pear had an influence on the good pear. Did the good pear have an influence on the bad pear? No. Why is it that seems like we tell our kids, watch out for the bad influences? Because it's harder to in the flesh. It's easier for us to succumb to the flesh and say yes to the bad influence because everybody else is doing those things than the good influence. My dad used to say this, that I've said to my kids, I'm sure a couple of times. I said, hey, Dad, can I go do this? I would say everybody's doing that. And you've heard this before from you, or you have said it. My dad would respond with, everybody's not doing it. Oh, yes, they are, or no, they're not. How do you know, Dad? Because you're not. And you're part of everybody. The influences. How are you influencing the people around you? Let's go to Proverbs chapter 31, verses 4 and 5. Before we get into the virtuous woman, as I was reading this, there is an influence in here before we get there. Verse 4 says this: it is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings who drink wine, or for princes strong drink, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. The first thing I want to look at before we get to the virtuous woman's influence, this is this: the influence of choices that we make. The influences of choices. Do you know that we all have made hundreds of choices thus far today? Most of those choices didn't have a big influence, right? I don't know how many jackets Brother Bernie has, but I'm assuming he has more than one, right? Okay, good. I'm like, notice I didn't have a choice. I wore this one. He said, I'm going to wear the gray jacket today. Did that make a big deal in his life? If he had done a blue one or a black one? No, not really. Or maybe I put the deodorant on my right arm before my left arm today instead of left before right. Does that matter? It's a choice. Does it matter? Does it matter if I chose to drink Dr. Pepper or Pepsi? You would say you should have chosen to drink water instead. I know that. But Pepsi, no, it doesn't make a big difference. If you chose to go, not to speed, 1 under the speed limit or 2 under the speed limit, does it really matter? Well, no. But there are some choices that you made that may have seemed small to you that could have made a major impact to someone else. For instance, have you ever held a door for somebody? Right? To us, to most people, it's a simple thing. Hey, let me to get that for you, right? But to that person, it could be the biggest thing in the world. Have you ever gone to Safeway and said, hey, I'll get that cart for you. I'm going inside. Some like, okay, whatever. Some say, whoa, why, thank you. That was, wow. You know, just a small thing could be big to someone else. Or I should say also, there are some other choices that we make that are big choices that has a lasting influence. Let's say I decide, since it's Father's Day, to ditch my family at the house and go to the bar all by myself. and I get drunk. I mean drunk. I get into the car and I drive home. As I drive home, I hit a vehicle. People in that vehicle die, and I'm arrested. You read the newspaper, Pastor Charleston arrested for drunk driving. Right? Is that a big choice or a small choice? That's a pretty big choice. What was the first choice that I made in that scenario? It was just to walk out the door. I could have gone to Walmart. I could have gone to McDonald's, gone to Burger King, but I walked out the door. For instance, David, when he sinned with Bathsheba, he made a choice long before he saw Bathsheba. And in fact, in that chapter, in the first verse, it says, it should have been the time when kings are out in battle. His first choice was, I'm going to stay home. To most people, it wasn't a big deal. But if he was in battle where he ought to be, would he have seen Bathsheba? Well, no. And that's what it's saying in this verse, that there are some influences. Our choices that we make influence our lives. The first thought is this: our choices have consequences when wrong choices are made. That's a little rough to read. Is that a little odd to read up there, the light and stuff? Okay, good. Going that way, I'm like, ooh, that light's odd, it's white and yellow. Our choices have consequences when wrong choices are made. Opposite is true as well, but in this passage, some wrong choices were made. And the consequences are pretty bad. It says they pervert the judgment. They forget the law. Saying that you know the law, you have done the law, you understand the law, you've kept the law, but because you made bad choices, it seems like you forgot to do what you're supposed to have done. You forgot to do the simple things. You forgot just to do what's right. Wrong influences. Hey, Carl, can you do me a favor? Can you go look upstairs and see in the refrigerator if there's a bottle of water? It's not? Bummer. Is there anything in there? Oh, boy. Is that new? Are you sick? You sure? I don't usually do this. Oh, that was a choice. The influence could be that I get sick because of him. Oh, man. But thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Do what? No, it's good now. Once I take my first swallow, I am good. But I don't usually drink after people. The only people I do really on purpose is my wife. Like if my kids, not my mom and dad, my sister, no way, Jose. My mom and dad knew that I was going to marry Tiffany when I drank after her. And they, well, she's the one for sure. Because that's just the way I was. The second thing is this: wrong influences can and will cause us to live in corruption. That's what it's talking about. If we keep making wrong choices, what's going to happen? The consequences are going to be the same. Worse and worse and worse. For instance, let's go back to David. He made a wrong choice. It influenced his life. He said, I'm not going to go to battle. And he didn't. Not a big thing, but it influenced his life. He looks up into the rooftop, sees Bathsheba. Did he have to take the second look? He could say, oh my goodness, no, I'm going back down. Right? Small choice, I'm just going to stare a little bit. It's okay, no big deal. Nobody would know what's going to happen. The more he looks, the more his emotions go high. That's what happens with dogs. The more they are looking at something they want, the more that cup fills up. And then once it fills up, you can't control it anymore. Or harder to control, to say. He eventually said to the servant, go get me her. A choice, influence. And then the servant said, wait a minute, isn't that Uriah's wife? And he should have said, you're right. But is that what he does? No, go get her. So he does. He has an act with her. consequences of not going to battle to begin with. And then she becomes pregnant. Now he's stuck. So in his mind, how do you cover it up? Hey, Uriah, welcome home, buddy. Come on home. Why don't you spend the night with your wife and everything will be great? And then everybody will think it's Uriah's baby. But Uriah said, no, I'm going to sleep outside like my men are in battle. I'm not going to have. He's like, no. So what does that force David to do? It should have forced him to confess. But no. He gives Uriah's descendants to Uriah that says, you go into the heat of the battle, and everybody else pull your men back, and Uriah is forced to die. Where did that all start? When he refused to go. Wrong influences can and will cause us to live in corruption. Those choices influenced his life. Number two is this. As we start talking about the virtuous woman, it's the opposite of what we just read. That she allowed the influences in her life to do good. Her choices were good choices. Verses number 11 and 12. Well, verse 10. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband does safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. Or the idea is, so he doesn't want to be unfaithful. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Again, I am not speaking on behalf or to mothers. These influences apply to human beings. Male, female, adult, child, it doesn't matter. All these influences, what's the word? Apply or applicable to anyone. The first influence is this, influence upon a spouse. This lady had an influence upon her spouse, and no doubt it was reciprocated. It was both. It's amazing. Ephesians 5 says for the woman to submit to the husband, correct? And if I were preaching through Ephesians, the wife's like, oh, okay, you're just preaching to me. But then we would say that the husbands have to love their wives. But also it says before all of those things to submit yourselves one to another first. Which means not only should the wife submit to the husband should submit to the wife should love the husband should love the wife. What kind of influence is there? It says in that verse, the heart of her husband does safely trust in her. It's an influence of trust. Trust. How many of you have ever had a dog in your life? How many of you have like 5 dogs in the house? Just like, oh, it's me. There are some dogs you can trust to be in their house alone. There are some dogs not so much. Have you ever had a dog in your house, not in a kennel? You leave and you come back and the house is rearranged. You know what I'm talking about? The couch is chewed up. The bread's outside the cupboard. The trash is upside down. And you think, what happened? If you were to leave again, would you trust a dog not to do that again? Well, no, he's going to do it again. Or she, whatever it is. Yeah. It's trust. Trust is built over time. Trust is built because you love that person. The spouse says, hey, I trust her. He trusts me. It's the influence of trust. Second is this. It's the influence of faithfulness. As I mentioned, he has no need of spoil. It's the influence of faithfulness. I'm going to be faithful. Are you influencing those around you with trust? Are you influencing those around you with faithfulness? You can be counted on. Your word is your bond. The third thing is this. Influence of kindness or goodness. Let me see here. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Ask you this. What's that song? What the world needs now is love. Sweet love. Is that how it goes? Something like that old song. You know. And that's true. What the world needs now is love. But not that kind of love. They need John 3:16 love. For God so loved the world, right? You know what Christians need right now is kindness. There's a lot of Christians who are just not kind or just not good. Well, they are people, or they're known for just being unkind. We can influence people with just our kindness. Isn't it? What's that song? Oh man, I was listening to. I forget who sings it. Some Christian group. I forget who sings it. But I was mopping the floor, and the song came on, and I'm like, what a statement! The idea was, why is kindness seem to be out of style? Or why is it odd to somebody when someone's actually kind? Oh, you're being kind to me. Wow. Why is that the norm? The norm should be kindness. And the oddness should be, oh, you're not kind? That's weird. You know, the influence of kindness, influence of goodness. That's the idea here. It was natural for them just to be kind. The fourth thing is this: the influence of consistency all the days of her life. She was consistent in trust, consistent in faithfulness, consistent in kindness. She was just consistent. That's the influence that you have. Do you know that if you're not consistent with those things, your influence will all of a sudden cease? That if you say, if one time I'm just not kind, well, I don't know if I'm kind again. Anybody been bit by a dog before? I have recently on the hand. Scar there still. Do you know that next time I worked with that dog, you know what I was very careful of doing? Where I put my hand. Why? I didn't trust it. It bit me once. Actually, it bit me more than once. It bit me once. I'm careful again. Wait a minute. Or you're going to bite me again. But if I worked with a dog and it never bit me, why would I think it would bite like me? See what I'm saying? So the idea is, why would I think not trustworthy? Why would I think not faithful? Why would I think she wouldn't be kind or he wouldn't be kind? That is what a Christian should be known for, is trusting, faithfulness, and kindness. But number 3 is this. Verse number 15. There's another group that this woman was an influence upon. Verse number 15. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. What a thought. I put it this way: in our lives, influence upon our colleagues, the people you work with. Yes, they work for her, the maidens, they work for her. But in our context or our application, what kind of influence do we have upon the people that we work with? Or Caleb does not have a job. Tell you about the conversation I had in the car. I said, hey, honey, tomorrow, what's your goals tomorrow? Tomorrow is a holiday. I said, no, I asked you first at night. Cara, what's your goals tomorrow? And she has to scoop certain stuff tomorrow. That's what she said. I'm going to scoop, and it rhymes with scoop. I'm going to scoop tomorrow. Oh, great goals in the yards. I said, hey, honey, what's your goals tomorrow? Well, I want to try to get this clean and that clean. Oh, cool. I said, my goals are this. Me and Cody's going to try to clean up the yard a little bit. I asked my son, Caleb, what's your goals tomorrow? I'm going to try to win this game I'm like, everybody's goal was to work and do something, and your goal was to win a video game. Oh, the life of an 8-year-old. He don't have a job. So how he's listening to me and said, "But Dad, I don't have a job. How can I have influence upon my colleagues?" That's a big, big word, Dad. For those who don't have jobs, maybe influence upon your schoolmates, people you work with, because school is work. Ain't that right, Cora? Yeah, it's work. Too much work. And Cody said, I'm glad I'm done with that work. You work, so how can I influence those people around me who I work with or work for? Let's look at some thoughts with that. The first thought is this. It says, well, it is yet night. What do we typically do at night? Sleep. How many of you just hate sleep? You wish you could never go to sleep again in your life. I know. How many of you say, I wish I had more sleep sometimes? I wake up too soon. I can't go back to sleep, all those types of things. This lady, she says, well, it's still yet night. When people are normally in bed and resting and calming down, I am going to work. I'm going to make sure my household, the maidens, the people that I work with, they have meat. What's that called? Selflessness. We can have influence upon the people that we work with because of our selflessness. Thinking about others instead of ourselves. The second is this. It says that she giveth while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. It's because of her servitude, because she just wants to serve. It is a rare thing that you find even in workplaces, even your waiter or waitress in restaurants, somebody who just wants to serve. Hey, what can I do for you? We went out to eat for Father's Day. We went up there to Monkey Business. They have that new place. Oh man, I'm glad they finally went into a brick and mortar, good food. Now, I don't know, every person on staff there, every person came by and said, hey, how's it going? Do you need anything? Do you need some more ketchup? Here's some more napkins. How about this? I know, I was like, wow, you don't see that very often. They just want to make sure that you're taken care of, serving. How can we have an influence upon the people that we work with or work for? Just by being a servant, by being to serve. The fourth one is this. Verse number 20. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor. Yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. No doubt this lady has some money. No doubt she has a good business. In fact, in these verses it says that she is very business savvy. She takes care of the money, those types of things. Number 4, we see this influence upon the poor. Influence upon the people in our neighborhoods. Influence upon the people who need help. How can we as Christians influence them? Oh, it's easy to influence the people that we get along with. The people that we play ball with, the people that we hang out with, the people that on the same boat that we are, kind of. It's easy to influence them. But this lady didn't just influence the town people or the people with the businesses. She influenced the poor. To the needy, she said. Matthew chapter 25. Did I put it up there, buddy? Good. Matthew 25, verse number 40 says this. And the king shall answer and say unto them, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. This goes back to the question that they asked, when did we clothe you? When did we do that for you? He said, if you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me, the least of these. Those who are not as fortunate as we are. Those who have possibly made some bad choices. Those who have been influenced by other things, whether because of their choices or because of some other things, but they have been in the wrong end of the influencing, and now the least of these. The poor, the needy, those who just need help. There's a song. It's called "Love the Broken Ones." I won't read all the lyrics, but the song starts off. I saw this sung in church, and it was played out at the same time. It's pretty cool. We'll say Cara, for instance. It starts off with a young girl who finds a Raggedy Ann. You remember those old dolls? A Raggedy Ann. Found it in a trash can. Had a broken arm, missing an eyeball, missing one of those eye things. But she picks it up out of the trash can and fixes the arm, fixes the eyes. She doesn't look as good as her other dolls, but she loves it just the same. Then it says, when she is older, she sees a teenager with track marks in her arm. A teenager, a girl who's gone through the ringer, takes her home and helps her. The whole time the song is saying she loves the broken ones, the Raggedy Ann, the people who've made bad choices in life. She wants to help them. And the chorus says this: love the broken ones, the ones that need a little patching up. See the diamond in the rough and make it shine like new. It really doesn't take much, a willing heart and a tender touch. If everybody loved like he does, speaking of Jesus, there'd be a lot less broken ones. Boy, what a statement. If everybody loved like God does, there'd be a lot less broken ones. This lady, the influence that she had on the poor, the needy, the ones that just need help. But what's the problem that some Christians have? Well, I am the needy. I am the poor. They should be helping me. That goes back to the selflessness. The selfishness. How can I, whether I'm not rich, I'm not this, how can I help someone else? The fifth thing that we see, verse number 23, there's only 15 points. So we're good. I'm just joking. Nobody's just, never mind. Verse number 23. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. Number 5, I put this: influence upon strangers. When she is out in the marketplace, out doing these things, you know what she did not do? Make fun of her kids, badmouth her husband. Boy, if my husband did this, her husband was known in the gates because when she talked to people that she did not know, then they knew her. They knew her husband. They knew the kids. They knew her life because of her. I've talked to many strangers in my life. For some reason, sometimes strangers like to talk to me. And I want them to always, but they just seem to and they always say this: I'm not sure why I told you all that. I would say, I'm not sure either, but I'm a listening ear if you need to talk. And sometimes if people, colleagues and co-workers would talk, and I think to myself, they just go on, and I said, boy, you must have the worst husband in the world. You must have the worst wife in the world. You must have the worst kids in the world. But all they do is talk about how bad they are. When you talk to strangers, how many times do we talk to how many people in our lives do we just talk to once or twice? A lot of people sometimes. Just quick goodbye, except for in this town. If you talk to somebody today, tomorrow you talk to the same person. But how many times do you just see somebody you don't see very often, just talk to them real fast? What kind of quick influence do you have on their lives? We have influence with our language, with the words that we say. I should say this, or how we say it. I am bad for this. I say the right thing sometimes, but the way I say it, it doesn't come out right. Or my body language, or my tone. We have influence with the words, the language that we speak. What kind of words are we using? It says in Psalm 19, the last verse, I believe, that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord. The words of my mouth. What kind of influence do we have with the words of our mouth? We also have influence with our lifestyle of what we do, how we live, the places that we go, the places that we don't go, the places the things that we do, our lifestyle. You know that all of us have a lifestyle. Come to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Bible studies. We talk about God. We talk about this, all these kinds of things. What kind of influence do you have with just your lifestyle? This woman had an influence with the words that she said and the lifestyle that she did. Verse number 28, and lastly, her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praiseth her. The influence upon family. You know how hard that is sometimes to influence your family? Why is that? Sometimes you only see people. We'll use me as an example. I use Brother Bernie a lot. I pick on him. I'll pick on me. Sometimes, and we'll use me as an example, that you only see me. Some of you only see me twice a week. Some of you see me more than that. But do you know who sees me the most? My family. They see me when I'm in a good mood. They see me when I'm in a bad mood. And Carl's like, he has a lot of those. In a bad mood. They see me when things are going great. They see me when things are going bad. They see how I handle things. They watch what I say in this situation. And for Cody and Cara, Cody could not watch me raise a kid because he was the first kid. But then we had Caleb watching me be a dad at an older age. They're learning some things, influencing some things. How did he do this? Why did he do this? From Cody's perspective, he has had me as a coach. Cara's perspective, she has had me as a teacher. Second grade, third grade. She was young. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Why did I teach that age? I do not know. You've got to be special. Special patience, special everything to teach that age. They watched me in different scenarios. And then they would hear me preach and teach and things and coach. Then I'll go home with them. Guess who's still watching? The kids. My wife takes notes when I preach. It's not notes that she sees up there. It's like, well, he didn't do this yesterday, but he said he did. Just kidding. She don't do that. But she sees me preach, then she goes home with me. My friends, the same thing. The opposite is true. My colleagues, the people that I work with, know that I'm a pastor. So they're assuming that what they see is how I am in my church, at my home. You assume all of those things. It's really hard, and we have to be consistent. Do we fail? Absolutely. But we have to be consistent in our influences because our family sees it all. Influencing our family, two things that will be finished because of consistency. That's what it takes. How can we influence? I think the Bible reading today on Kalite, somebody read the verse, Proverbs 22:6, I believe is the reference. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he is older, he would not depart from it. Consistency. That's a large part of training is consistency. People ask me all the time, I need help potty training my dog. I said, it's easy. Super easy. But it's hard. It's two words. Supervision and consistency. If you allow the dog to use the restroom in the house once, guess what? He's going to do it again. But if you're consistent, then guess what? He learns. Same thing with me as adults. If I get away with going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, guess what I'm going to try next? 15. Why not 20? Why not 25? Because the punishment wasn't consistent. The line wasn't drawn. No, you cannot do this. So it's consistency. They watch us for consistency. The world looks at us and says, how consistent are you? You say this, but are you consistent in your beliefs? The second is this. We can influence our family because of our honesty, or we practice what we preach. Who we say we are in the light, we are also in the dark. because of honesty. Verse number 31. We'll end with this. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Do you know how to have influence? A lot of people want influence by trying. Look at me. Hey, look at me. Look what I did. Everybody, look at that. Hey. In this verse, I wrote this down. Influence does not require the limelight. You don't have to be in the limelight to influence people. Now, the people who are in the limelight, do they have a bigger audience sometimes? Sure. These basketball players, could they influence a lot more people than me? Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Was it Oklahoma, honey, or Oklahoma State? That softball team? Oklahoma. Oh, Oklahoma girls softball team just won the World Series for 3 years in a row. Never done it ever. Nobody's ever done that. First time ever. That team has won 3 times in a row. This particular team was special. Not because they were good. When they were interviewed, not just 1 or 2 of them, but several of the people on that team praised the Lord for it. And not just saying, hey, I want to thank God first, my parents next. It was full-fledged testimonies. It was full-fledged how he turned their life around. It was like, hey, I was this way, came here, he has changed my life. He has done amazing things in my life. All the glory, I mean, it was great. Does that mean the girls that are listening to her, to them, oh, I can be a Christian and play softball? Well, sure, absolutely. What an influence that is. But you don't have to be in the limelight to have influence. This lady wasn't in the limelight. She wasn't some great player. She was just a mother, just a wife, just somebody who worked in the house, just somebody who went to town. But the influence that she had, all of us can have a great influence. But the question is this: who are you influencing? Maybe jot some people down. Well, these people watch me. These people I see. These people things. But the next question is, how are you influencing them? The question is not, are you? The question is, how are you? Because you are influencing them. Is it for good or bad? Is it for selfish reasons or for spiritual reasons? Are you trying to influence them more towards God or more towards the world? Either way, you are an influence. How are you influencing the people that surround you? I hope, I pray, that it's like, how can I get them to be closer to God? How can I influence people to love God more? How can I influence people to be closer to God? How can I influence people so they will choose God, to choose hope, to choose salvation? How are you influencing people around you? Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for all you've given us. Thank you for this time we're going to come and worship you. Help us to have influence, not because we want the limelight, not because we want a pat on the back, but it says in us that you said that people will see our good works and not glorify me, but glorify you. That's what our prayer ought to be, is that we are doing things, we are speaking things, not so they glorify us, but they will see you through us, that you will shine through us. Help us to be an influence, a good influence, a godly influence, the people that we come in contact with. We love you and thank you and praise you for all you've given us.